The original Pokemon games, Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue, released for the Game Boy in 1996 in Japan and in 1998 in North America, setting the stage for what would become a global phenomenon. These games revolutionized the RPG genre, offering a unique blend of strategy, exploration, and collection. As a child, embarking on the journey to become Pokemon champion, I found the experience unforgettable, one that blended adventure, strategy, and social interaction in ways never seen before. Personally, I never had Pokemon growing up. I played it when my friend was done with it. I played it every day at lunch during grade 5, when my friend would bring it for me. I had a Beedrill, Fearow, Charizard, Victreebel, Raticate, and Gyarados as my main team. It's a core memory of my first experience with Pokemon, likely a similar core memory that I share with many of you. This review will dive into the key elements of these iconic games and examine the aspects that made Pokemon Red and Blue so special. At its heart, Pokemon Red and Blue follow a simple yet captivating concept: catch Pokemon, train them, and battle your way to become Pokemon champion. This foundational gameplay loop, catching, battling, and evolving, was a perfect mix of strategy and fun. Players are tasked with capturing 150 unique creatures, each with their own moveset and stats, and using them to progress through a series of gym battles and ultimately face the Elite Four to become the Pokemon champion. However, the design of two separate games may feel a bit questionable in hindsight. Each version offers unique Pokemon that cannot be caught in the other, pushing players to trade with others to complete their Pokedex. While this system promotes social interaction and multiplayer fun, it often feels more like a marketing strategy to sell two versions of the game rather than a necessity for the game's narrative. You can achieve the same effect of training to obtain all 150 Pokemon by simply adding more choice in Pokemon selection. One game would have been sufficient. That said, making two titles for the same generation sets a precedent for every following generation of the franchise. The two games are essentially the same in every meaningful way. The difference in Pokemon availability comes down to personal preference. The only advantage Pokemon Blue has over Pokemon Red is that it's easier to get Porygon from the game corner, making the journey to collect all 150 Pokemon slightly easier. There are 150 Pokemon, 151 including Mew, but only 78 unique evolutionary lines, including standalone Pokemon with no evolution. This makes the actual number of Pokemon feel more bloated than it really is. The game does suffer from balance issues, particularly regarding the Psychic-type Pokemon. Psychic types are overwhelmingly powerful. This can create an imbalance in battles, where Psychic Pokemon become the go-to choices for players. The limited types and underrepresentation of others like Ghost and Dragon also leads to a lack of variety in battle strategies, which detracts from the overall diversity of the gameplay. Water and Poison types, meanwhile, are overused throughout the game. Dual types are everywhere, and not always necessary. For example, Geodude could have just been a rock type, Pidgey could have just been a flying type, Gengar could have just been a ghost, and Bellsprout just grass type. The dual type combos sometimes adds depth, but often feel overused, rendering some Pokemon fragile and lacking meaningful design. Additionally, some moves have odd typings. Gust and Razor Wind, for example, are not flying type moves, despite clearly being wind based. Karate Chop is inexplicably normal type, even though it sounds like a fighting type move. The game doesn't do a great job of communicating information. New players are left guessing about how much damage moves do, what stats mean, and how mechanics like critical hits or status effects function. There's no built-in way to check Pokemon's types or weaknesses, so trial and error, playground rumors, or strategy guides became the default. The AI in battles isn't very smart. Trainers often spam status moves or make baffling decisions, making some fights easier than they should be. That said, it still provides enough challenge for its target audience. The world of Red and Blue is filled with mysteries, challenges, and opportunities for exploration. Navigating through towns, caves, and forests is relatively straightforward, with no major obstacles. But each area offers an appropriate level of difficulty that keeps players engaged. The game is quite linear, so getting lost is unlikely, a great design choice for children. There are usually only a few places you can go at a time. There are a couple of off-routes, like Diglett's Cave or the Biker's Road, but even these are fairly easy to navigate. The puzzles and challenges you encounter are suitably leveled to match your progression through the game. As you travel, the battles become more difficult, and the Pokemon you face increase in level. The game starts off relatively easy, but by the time you face the Elite Four and the champion, the difficulty curve ramps up, offering a satisfying challenge. That said, a level 50 Pokemon is often enough to finish the game, even though the max level is 100. Some of the awards along the way are solid. Thunderbolt from Lieutenant Surge, Bubble Beam from Misty, and TMs like Earthquakes are great moves. But others are duds, like Bide from Brock. A lot of the items you find along the routes are underwhelming, so it's a mixed bag overall. Fishing rods are one of the more questionable elements of item design. The old rod only rewards Magikarp, which you can catch using other rods anyway. The good rod and super rod are both found around Fuchsia City, meaning it's very possible you'll get the super rod before the good rod. It would have made more sense to remove the old rod and place the good rod earlier, maybe near Cerulean or Viridian City, to allow earlier access to water-type Pokemon. Environmental assets are reused frequently. All towns look quite similar. Caves are nearly indistinguishable from each other, and most routes have the same general layout and look. It keeps things consistent, but also makes the world feel a bit repetitive. For a Game Boy game, the graphics in Red and Blue are satisfying. They manage to capture the charm of the anime while working within the system's technical limitations. Some Pokemon sprites, like Machoke's awkward, derpy face, are questionable, but overall the visual design is effective and instantly recognizable. When played on a Game Boy Color, the game adds color palettes to each area. Every town has its own color theme, subtly enhancing the atmosphere and helping differentiate one location from another. The music is one of the game's biggest strengths. Tracks like the battle theme are iconic and instantly recognizable. The soundtrack enhances each setting. Intense tunes during battles, peaceful melodies in towns, and eerie music in places like Lavender Town. The Viridian Forest track feels a bit ominous for such a mellow area filled with bugs and Pikachus. And the low health warning sound is grating. In my experience, I would turn down the volume during low health situations, as the alert changed to annoyance over long periods of time. But overall, the soundtrack remains one of the most memorable aspects of the game. The UI is simple and easy to navigate. Menus are clean, intuitive, and don't get in the way. However, using HMs like Surf or Strength require diving into the Pokemon menu every time, which becomes tedious. A shortcut or hotkey would have been a welcome addition. Inventory management is a pain point. The bag has limited space and poor item sorting, especially with TMs piling up. You'll often need to go back to the PC just to make room, and even then the PC has the same limitations. Despite being an old game, there are no major glitches that ruin the experience. In fact, the many glitches that do exist, like duplicating items, encountering missing number, or manipulating wild Pokemon, are part of the game's charm. These quirks became part of the culture, adding fun rather than frustration. The story is straightforward. You are a young trainer who sets off to become the champion, facing gym leaders and a villainous Team Rocket along the way. The structure is linear, but effective. Your primary rival, a brash, arrogant trainer, provides some tension throughout the journey, but ultimately lacks the depth that would make him truly menacing. His appearances are quick, and his demeanor is annoying. Giovanni, the leader of Team Rocket, is a far more compelling character, and his reappearance as the final gym leader adds some much-needed seriousness to the game's villainous faction. Supporting characters like Professor Oak and Bill are helpful, but minimal. The protagonist is mute, serving as a blank state. While this helps with immersion, it also makes them feel detached from the story. Much of the protagonist's dialogue is projected onto the player, rather than offering choice as is common for RPG-style games. Still, it's an effective storytelling device for a game focused more on a journey than character development. One of the defining features of Red and Blue is the multiplayer. Using a link cable, players could trade and battle with friends, fostering a sense of community and competition. It's a feature that was way ahead of its time. The split versions may feel like a cash grab, but they encourage social interactions that became central to the franchise's identity. Beyond that, the game offers a lot of replayability. Completing the Pokédex, trying different team compositions, or doing challenge runs like Nuzlocke keep the experience fresh. However, post-game content is thin. Aside from catching legendary Pokemon, obtaining 150 Pokemon, and leveling up your team, there's not much left to do once you become champion. Grinding your Pokemon from level 50s or 60s, which is likely what you'll be at the end of Elite Four, to 100 is very boring and tedious. The post-game could have benefited from challenge battles and rematches with previous chainers to make the journey to level 100 more relevant. Despite its flaws, like unbalanced typing, repetitive environments, and limited post-game content, Pokemon Red and Blue remain among the most influential and beloved games of all time. The gameplay is fun, the music iconic, and the social features groundbreaking. The accessibility and charm make it a great starting point for newcomers and a nostalgic return for veterans. Personally, I'll never forget playing this game in grade 5, huddled in the back of the classroom during lunch with a borrowed Game Boy, happily grinding with my team, Beedrill, Fearow, Charizard, Victreebel, Raticate, and Gyarados. It wasn't the strongest lineup, but it was mine. Overall, Pokemon Red and Blue are essentially the same game. I scored Pokemon Red at 71.3 and Pokemon Blue at 71.31. Blue edges out due to the easier access to Porygon. Both are good games, worth your time, and more than deserving of their legendary status. In the end, Red and Blue are more than just games. They're time capsules, memories, and the start of something massive. On an exit note, comment and tell me, what is your first memory of playing Pokemon Blue and Red, and who is on your main team? If you haven't played these games, have you considered trying them out? Thanks for watching.